so I use art in two ways. I use it as a meditation. So in the studio, it's like creating, it's creative. I love making new images that I've never seen before, and then a lot of the like repetitive movements become meditative. Um, and then on the other hand, it's like I mentioned, it's like on Kawara, like his date paintings, and it's like a journal. And so coming back into the studio, I see that the studio is filled with artworks. I know that I've existed, and so not having those markers makes me feel like I'm free floating more, and I just love the idea um, of seeing this tangible evidence that I've been there. And so when I am forced to go on vacation, which I have to be forced to do, I will often start getting a little depressed after a while if I'm not making work. And so it's a coping mechanism. And in that sense, like, no, I would never give up art. I wish I could say like, because it makes me so happy, because that would be more beautiful. I'm saying that it helps me fight the demons.
It makes you not sad.
Yeah.
Helps you be less sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just, I know, I think we share some overlapping things, but caring for children, you also have like other caregiving roles that you perform in your life. But one of my children has diagnosed anxiety, and me too, and we're working through it. But
Mhm.
part of some of what I've learned with them is that being in something physical and tangible, this is talking about being outside nature and observing insects or whatever, making art keeps the anxious mind and body occupied on something and in the present. So whatever it is that can draw you back into the present is helpful. And I think, even though a little bit, yeah, I bucket maybe the idea of it being like an emotional release to make my work, it is like a grounding. So I
Yeah.
wonder if that's like part of
Yeah,
part.
definitely that vibes and the whole anxiety and the regrounding yourself. I think that's part of the meditative aspect.
Yeah,
Um, I guess there are three parts. There's the meditative aspect that helps battle the anxiety. There's the proof of existence, one that I like. It's like, physical, tangible journaling. And then there is a joy. I feel like there's a great joy for me in making something new. Um, and then
yeah,
you look back and you're like, holy shit, like that thing did not exist before.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, and that's
And
a magical thing, right?
yes, yeah. And did you have anything else? Like, you went straight to art school, right? Like, you didn't go to university, like you went to an art school to start out.
I studied psychology in undergrad. It was a little more loosey-goosey than that. I didn't have a major that I liked, so I developed my own based on like um, English, like research, like English research, psychology, and religion. And then I like did sort of a final thesis project on automatic drawing, which is like a surrealist thing where you let the unconscious mind do the drawing for you. And then I wrote a big thesis on like why it was not solipsistic, which it was, totally solipsistic. But that's how
Yeah,
they know you're smart, is that you can defend a solipsistic act.
right,
And
right.
so that was undergrad, and then after that, my father passed away like during college, and that was extremely traumatic. So I was like, okay, I want to now go and teach myself how to do art.
Mm.
I was actually rejected by the arts program at my undergrad. So I then was like, oh, you're rejecting me? That means that I have to do it now. I'm like such a contrarian. And so I pushed myself into creating, but more like realist. I taught myself realism, and spent like 2 or 3 years doing that. Then I did construction for a little while, um, and that was also cathartic. We mentioned before the idea of I had this like epiphany where I was working renovating an apartment, and was living in the apartment while I was renovating it. It was like a rehab, and so it was like this empty space, and I would draw at night and renovate during the day, and then during the day I was fixing the sink, and the plumbing was just like it felt so easy compared to the art, that there was like instructions on how to like put together this sink, and you knew that it wasn't that it was working because it wasn't leaking at the end of the project. And with art, like it's always leaking. There's never there's never a moment that it's like that you're sure that it, or maybe that you know if it's not leaking, then the work is done perhaps, and it's like ready for show and it's ready for critique. But until then, it feels so sloppy, um, like a toddler. It's just like bonking around and like and
Yeah.
leaking fluids. Um, and then I went to, and so then I studied by myself, but then I started doing a few residencies. I did a residency at SVA, one at Cooper Union, and then finally buckled down and went to grad school.
Did you
Uh,
do those summer residencies?
yeah, I did the summer residencies.
Which were you there at Cooper's first year doing that? Because I
I
was
don't,
there the second year.
I don't believe it was the first year.
Amazing. We were like two ships in the night. I was the second year. I got into the first year and deferred. But SVA had like a summer thing too at that point.
So I may have been the third year or something. It was
Yeah.
like 2003 maybe
Okay.
at
Wow.
Cooper, and like 2002 SVA,
Yeah.
and then 2006 I went to grad school at Brooklyn College,
Okay.
uh, and then I've been like fighting that ever since. That like academic style of making art is and that's something I also think of giving up sometimes, is like I come from an academic background, and the like polemic nature of art, which I feel like is something you're sort of forced to do in graduate school in order to defend a thesis.
Yes.
Um, it's much easier to defend a thesis when it's polemic or like didactic in some way.
Yeah.
And and so I got really into creating series that are like educational as much as they are um, art, like contemporary artworks, and that's why museums love them. Um, but sometimes I want to go back toward and like fully embrace that, like the automatic drawing again, and the
Mm.
like feeding from the unconscious and having the work like fully leaking, like messy, and
Yeah.
because the thing like art has to do like multiple things at once that are often contradictory, and like for painters, like we want the work to be aesthetic often but also be messy at the same time, and we want it to be human but also be like look kind of like a product,
Polished or something.
and
Yeah.
polished and
Considered, not expedient. Yeah.
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 And so how do they like, balancing those two, at least like that's our, I feel like we have similar vibes on what we expect from a painting, and
Yeah.
balancing those two is part of it, but that's also a extremely leaky activity.
Yeah. Yeah. Very leaky. And yes, speaking of leaky, we mentioned this, but the Jack Whitten retrospective has so
Mhm.
many leaky paintings in it, so many leaky works, meaning, I mean, it's killer. I lugged the catalog around my back, like to upstate on a train and back, and like, like it was worth it to see it, get the catalog. I wish I could go back. And there were many pieces in there that were so human. Like, oh, he
Mm,
probably made his own stretchers. He probably made his own frames, which is like a loose term for like how he decided to deal with some of the edges. And I know it was a different time when the art world wasn't so like professionalized, but it was refreshing to see that the work was human, not always human scale. I mean, he definitely had some like large scale, but human made. Like it felt like there was a indexical relationship with his, like his hands were making, or even the tools that he made to create his work. Um,
And that's
yeah,
something that, like, when we're talking about like quitting art, getting back to the topic, is like to see someone like that's retrospective, you're really looking at this like giant history of someone. And like, I wish I could more quit that like social media vibe of being in the now and always feeling like I have to produce by tomorrow.
yeah,
And
yeah,
like okay with like, well, this month I'm going to be the artist that like eats bonbons and like watches, you know, like Alien Resident, or what, like Resident Alien, or some like weird Netflix show, right? And not like be the one that needs to like be working on the essay for the next museum thing, and then pushing this and pushing that. Um,
yes,
that
yes,
stuff, like, I don't know, that stuff, like, maybe not quit, but slow down.
yeah. And I mean, I guess in a perfect world, I mean, the world used to be perfecter for some people, I suppose, or maybe still is. But in a perfect world, you have those entities. I don't know which ecosystem you're in, but like maybe it's curators, maybe it's friend, maybe it's dealers, galleries, uh, interns, fellow professors. I don't know who can kind of pick up pick up some of those things so that you're not like carrying all of it.
I mean, that
I
would be ideal, is that, like, you're an artist and you have a team of people that are assisting, like, with curation and with writing about the work, and
yeah,
or like just like having someone come to your house and pick up work for a show rather than having to like drive it in 2 hours to,
yeah,
which, like, but it is what it, that's part of it. Part of being
yeah.
an artist, I think, is and most artists do not get to be hands off.
Right, right. I think because I spent so many years of my life listening to sermons, like there's always like a catch or a hook, or there's like three things to remember about, serving your neighbor or whatever. But I do have three F words for um that seems consistent about like continuing to make your work and thrive in a healthy way. That's what I mean too, is like you could some people are making it but at the expense of like a lot of other things that I want to prioritize. So one is friends. It's great to have friends around you who are reminding you like this is a worthy thing, or like, hey, don't worry, take some time off or whatever. A lot of people don't have that support system. It's great to have funds, and yeah, that's not always the case for many of us, like whether it's through like generational real estate or, just wealth in general or whatever it is. Um, and the third is fortitude. I think that's what you see with like mid-career people. We're just like, we're continuing to knock this out despite so many things, despite the world being crazy, our children needing us, like not in spite of that, like we're doing all that on top of this artwork that we're doing. And I think part of these questions are to get at like no shame for anyone, like how is this happening, and perhaps to recognize the privileges that some of us have that we don't realize we have, or some of us have now that we didn't have 5 years ago, or um, and then to like, yeah, maybe open up our definition of like what this art life looks like.
Yeah, I think so. I've, similar to your four F's, I have like life zones that I think of, and there's, for me, there's like seven of them, and there's like friends, there's family, there's finances, um, and then there's like your mental health and physical health, your spiritual health, and I think some of those get separate. Oh, then there's like your career and your hobbies. And with the arts, it's sort of complicated. Like, what is your career and what is your hobby?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but those
Yeah.
are my like big things. And like, oftentimes when the other question is like, what would you do if you weren't making art? And putting more time into those buckets, like putting time. I mean, I spend so much time on my family, but also like more time with friends, right? More, um, more time on your spiritual health, more time
Mm-hmm.
on your mental health and physical health. All those buckets could use stuff. I mean, if it's a question, and that's like a part of like a question for the question is like, what do you mean by not doing
Yeah.
art? Not having a career or not making like art in the studio, like the 2 hours you get at night to make art in the studio? Like, which one are we talking about?
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. 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 All those things. I'm interested in how people define that. You know. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, as a career, I could, I could run a nonprofit. I'm like good at getting grants. I could do construction. I feel like I could do anything except for like being a car mechanic. I decided early on I'm not going to be a car mechanic. And that was like my one thing that I don't want to do.
Did
Uh,
you have family who
no,
were?
no, I just decided it came when when I was like fixing that sink. And I was like, I'm going to learn how to do anything in the house, but you have to have limits. And my limit is the vehicle.
Hmm.
And for some reason, that was the only limit, but I need to set up more limits because, like,
They're ungoals. Yeah. When I turned 30, which is laughable that I had these side ungoals, and one was I'm never going to run a marathon. I ran a half marathon. I was like, I'm not ever spending that much time training again. One was knitting. I was like, not trying to knit ever again.
hmm
And there was one more. I don't know what it was, but those two have stuck with me. Like, yeah, just, and I think I sometimes say like aim lower to myself. And it's not that I'm not for excellence, but when I tell myself to aim lower, sometimes it helps me prioritize better and go, okay, this needs, like right now, I have a show that's opening in 2 weeks and my work needs my attention. Like
yeah.
whether it's, yeah, just getting stuff together. Um,
And you can
or
do things that you enjoy, right? That's
yeah,
if you're not filling your space up with all the other garbage, which it's so easy to keep filling.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. Um, well, thank you for sharing your thoughts on this. I feel like I'll come back and we'll do it. We'll do a round two sometime.
Yeah.
So
So
you've got your life zones. I've got my,
we'll start a podcast called The Leaky Painting.
please, leaky. Let your life be leaky.
Let your life be leaky.
All right. Thank you. Good luck on the driveway.
Yeah, thanks on the leaky. And I would say also, yeah, I'm working towards some big shows that I'm
Yes, please.
not announcing yet. But one in New Jersey this August, and a big new mural in East Haddam, Connecticut. That's like a pro LGBTQ 46-foot long mural that I'm really excited to paint with cats. It's a it's a cafe slash cat sanctuary, and there's
Cool.
lots of cats there. The other show in New Jersey is all record albums, but also little cats, and and that's for another leaky podcast is talking about cats.
Okay, let's